once you've separated, you may be left wondering what to do about all your assets that you and your ex-partner had together, especially if you own a house together. So tell me, Diane, if a couple cannot reach an agreement about dividing their assets, do they have to go to court?
Look, if parties cannot reach an agreement about the division of their property following separation, then either one of them can make an application to the court for the court to determine how to distribute their assets. But as we always say, if you can negotiate and get an agreement, that is the best thing, because sometimes reaching an agreement may mean your matter is resolved more quickly, and importantly, you control the outcome.
Because it's not easy, because there's emotions involved, and depends on how messy your separation is as to what.
And it means that you can decide what you've accumulated together, what happens with it.
Perfect. So is property settlement still possible if the couple wasn't married?
Absolutely, though the issue is whether were the parties in a de facto relationship. So before the court can determine the financial dispute or a property settlement, parties have to satisfy the court that they were in a genuine domestic relationship and a de facto relationship, and that has broken down. So there are some requirements to prove this, and one of those is that they were in a relationship for at least 2 years, or there is a child of the de facto relationship. And things that prove whether you're in a de facto relationship, there's a lot of things that the court looks at, but most things are like sharing the same residence, being recognised by others as being in a de facto relationship. So if a person does not meet the 2-year threshold, but they made significant contributions to assets that have been accumulated within that 2-year period, there is also an ability for the court to determine that distribution as well. In terms of a de facto relationship, I have to say though, if you've got any questions about whether you were in one or whether the court can distribute it and you don't meet that 2-year threshold, you should obviously get some advice in terms of whether you were in a de facto relationship, because you don't want to start something and then ultimately be told, yeah, you weren't in a relationship to begin with.
You just left your toothbrush there.
Yes, exactly.
That's not included.
Absolutely.
Is there a time constraint then for people after they've separated? Because some people wait a really long time to do this, the court side of things. Yeah,
there is, and it really depends on if you were in a de facto relationship or you're a married couple. I'll start off with the de facto relationship. What the court says is a limitation period. Now that's just a fancy legal word for a time within which you must take some steps. So for a de facto relationship, it is 2 years from the date of separation. But if you were married, it is 1 year from the date of your divorce becoming final. Now, the issue though with that is you can't apply for a divorce until you show you've lived 12 months separately and apart from your spouse. So you really have that period of, there's 12 months, you have to show 12 months separately and apart. You then apply for your divorce. Then, what happens is once the divorce is granted, it's 12 months from the date of the divorce becoming final. So the divorce is granted, it then becomes final, and then it's 12 months from that day. But
you've got to get all your property settlements and everything done by.
So 2 things, you either finalise your property settlement or you've commenced proceedings in the court. So usually what will happen is people are negotiating even if they've got this limitation period or the time within the date by which they must do something. And if they're unable to reach an agreement, then of course they should commence proceedings before that date. Otherwise, the limitation period has expired.
Which means then you can't.
Well, it doesn't. Well, that's interesting because people do say, well, that means that I can't do anything. Without going into all the legal jargon of it, the reality is you can still, after that time, do something. It's just a little bit harder, and those people should definitely get legal advice before doing that.
Absolutely. Because you can do property settlements before you divorce though too? Or?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So people also come and say, okay, well, we've separated, but I know I can't do my property settlement until I'm divorced. That is something that I hear people say so very often, and it's just not the case. Once you separate, you can divide your property.
Straight away.
Absolutely.
And that's probably better, right?
It is better because the longer you leave it, people may accumulate wealth. People may go and purchase other properties themselves, not knowing that property may be considered in any then property distribution.
And also the opposite of that is that property values can go down, and one person, should they be paying rent to the other party, and it can get really, really messy.
Look, in terms of rental, that also often occurs where people say, well, the other person's in the home, why aren't they paying me rent? What would normally happen in that instance is that person would more than likely pay the mortgage because the other person is out there renting. So there's a lot of things in terms of the
messy,
property.
But it's your job, not mine.
But it's one of those things where it's really important that your circumstance is your circumstance. It may be a little bit different to the next person's, but the reality is you should really just get some advice, even if it's just a little bit of advice for you to know what you've got to do and dates by which you've got to do certain things, if there is a date. Because if people have just separated and they're married, they don't have a limitation period until they've got their divorce order.
So you've got plenty of time. If you don't get divorced for 5 years, it can just sit there, and then you've got a year after that.
Absolutely. So
but it's not recommended.
Well, it isn't recommended because people want to move on.
Yeah.
They want to move forward beyond what has occurred. And to do that, they need to be able to work together, particularly if they've got kids, but work together to divide their finances. And the reality is this: in terms of moving forward, people generally can't move forward until that's decided.
Yeah.
Because they need to know what's going to happen with that before they can move forward. So, yes, people should generally, whether they're in a de facto relationship or were married, they should divide their property or seek to divide it as quickly as possible. But again, emotions, people find it really difficult to go and see a lawyer because they're taking that step. They realise
it's done. Yeah, which is a bit hard for some people.
Absolutely, and we understand that.
Yeah, so if you're watching right now, and you're still sitting on the fence about doing the property settlement, it's a really great idea to go and consult a professional as you continue this difficult journey. So definitely get in touch with the team at Ruhl Family Law today. They would love to help you get it sorted and help you move on with life.